Ever think about how quickly life can change? Like, one minute, everything's normal, and the next, your whole world's upside down.
Yeah, it's like that rug pulled out from under you feeling.
Exactly, and that's exactly what happened to Corey Shaughnessy.
Oh, this is a tough one.
It really is. She had this, like, picture-perfect life, successful business, loving family, and then, bam, betrayal hits hard.
The betrayal by someone you trust completely. It's a wound that cuts deep.
That's what we're diving into today, the Shaughnessy family story. We've got court documents, interviews, reports, the whole 9 yards.
Real true crime thriller material.
We're talking about the murder of Ted Shaughnessy, a big-time Texas jeweler, and the shocking discovery that his adopted son, Nick, was the one behind it all.
It's those cases that really make you question human nature, you know? The depths people will sink to for money, for power, even turning against their own family.
And that's what's so wild about this case, right?
Yeah.
On the surface, the Shaughnessy's were living the dream.
Yeah, the American dream, successful business, beautiful home, seemingly close family.
Exactly. They had it all. Ted and Corey had built this thriving jewelry business in Austin, a
Yeah.
beautiful home, everything. But as we're going to see, that perfect family image was just a facade.
A facade hiding some very dark secrets. It's a reminder that appearances can be deceiving, you know?
Oh, absolutely. And that's where this case takes a dark turn. March 1st, 2018, their world is shattered. A home invasion, Ted is murdered, and Corey finds herself in a shootout, fighting for her life.
It's hard to even imagine what that must have been like for her.
Just horrifying. And at first, of course, everyone thinks it's a random act of violence, maybe a robbery gone wrong.
Seems like the most likely scenario in those situations, but then the investigators start digging and the pieces don't quite fit.
Right, like some things just didn't add up. Nothing valuable was taken from the house, no jewelry, no cash.
That's unusual for a home invasion. Usually the motive is pretty clear-cut.
Exactly, it was a red flag. And then there's the missing gun box from the house, and it turns out the murder weapon was the same caliber as the missing gun.
Okay, so now we're talking premeditation. This wasn't some random act of violence.
Right, and then there's Nick and his girlfriend, Jackie. Their behavior after the murder, it was off. Almost too perfect, too rehearsed.
People grieve in different ways, but something about their demeanor probably set off alarm bells for the investigators.
Exactly, and as the investigation goes deeper, their stories start to unravel. Inconsistencies, lies, the whole thing. It comes out that Nick and Jackie had secretly gotten married, which would give them a claim to the Shaughnessy estate.
Ah, so there's the motive, the inheritance, classic tale of greed and betrayal.
And the real clincher, the smoking gun, if you will, were text messages between Nick and Jackie. These messages lay it all out, their money problems, their desire to inherit everything, and chillingly, their plan to hire a hitman.
Wow, so they were actively planning this, cold-bloodedly plotting to murder Ted and Corey.
It's mind-blowing, right?
Yeah.
The level of premeditation, the cold-heartedness, and to think Corey welcomed these people into her home, trusted them, loved them, it's just staggering.
It really shows how manipulative some people can be, how they can fake affection and loyalty while plotting something so sinister. And it highlights the vulnerability we all have when we trust others.
It's a reminder that evil can hide in plain sight, even within a family. And in this case, unraveling Nick and Jackie's web of deceit started with a seemingly small detail, a green Anderson t-shirt.
A green t-shirt, that's what brought the whole thing down.
It seems crazy, right? But this t-shirt, caught on a security camera at Nick and Jackie's house, became the key. It led investigators to the hitmen, Cameron Vosmek and Johnny Leon.
That's incredible how a tiny detail like that can crack a case wide open. Talk about attention to detail.
Right, and once they had the hitmen, the whole puzzle started coming together. Leon confessed, and his phone records pointed to another man, Arian Smith, who admitted to firing the fatal shot that killed Ted. But Smith's confession, it added a whole other layer to this already complex case. He was deeply remorseful, even requested the death penalty.
Whoa, remorseful. That's a complete 180 from the cold, calculated attitude of Nick and Jackie. It makes you wonder what was going through their minds during all of this. Did they even grasp the weight of their actions, the devastation they were causing?
It's hard to say, but throughout the investigation, Corey, Ted's wife, and Nick's adopted mother, she remained convinced her son was innocent. It's powerful, the unwavering faith a mother can have in her child, even when the evidence is piling up against him.
That's the kind of love and trust that's hard to break. But as the investigation went deeper, the truth became impossible to ignore. Imagine that moment for Corey. The crushing realization that the person she loved and trusted most was the one who orchestrated this horrible act. The betrayal, the pain, it's just unimaginable. To have welcomed the people who planned her death into her home, to have cared for them, loved them, it's a level of emotional trauma that most of us can't even fathom.
And as this whole twisted story starts to come out, right, the focus shifts to the courtroom. You'd think with all this evidence against Nick and everyone involved, justice would be pretty straightforward.
You think so, yeah.
But what happened next just added more controversy to this whole case.
Controversy. How so?
The plea deals that were offered to the people involved and the huge differences in their sentences, it caused a lot of outrage, especially from Corey.
It sounds like there's a lot to unpack there. What exactly were the sentences?
Okay, so Nick, along with the hitmen, Leon and Smith, they all got 35 years, but with the possibility of parole.
35 years, that's a significant amount of time.
Yeah, but then Jackie, the one who initially denied everything but later started cooperating with the authorities,
Right.
she only got 120 days in jail and probation.
120 days, that's a huge difference. So Jackie, the one who helped orchestrate this whole thing, practically walks free.
It's hard to wrap your head around, right? How could the person who planned this whole thing and the woman who helped him get such drastically different sentences?
Yeah, that does seem like a pretty big discrepancy. I mean, what was the reasoning behind that?
It raises some big questions about fairness in the legal system.
It does make you wonder. Plea deals, though they're often necessary, can sometimes feel like a double-edged sword, especially for the victims and their families.
You mentioned Jackie cooperating as a reason for her lighter sentence, but you could argue that her role in all of this, her willingness to participate in the murder of her own in-laws for money, it deserves much harsher punishment.
I see what you mean. It's a tough situation, ethically speaking. Legally, Jackie's cooperation was probably really valuable for the prosecution. Her testimony helped put the others away, which is a big win for them.
Right.
But for Corey and others, it must feel like a slap in the face.
It's hard to see it any other way. Corey lost her husband, her sense of safety, and then had to deal with the fact that her son was behind it all. And then to see the woman who helped orchestrate it all get off practically scot-free, it's just not right.
It really underscores the limits of the legal system, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It tries to be fair, but sometimes it doesn't really address the emotional needs of the victims.
Exactly. It's like the system is focused on the facts and the evidence, but it misses the human element, the grief, the betrayal.
The nuances of relationships and motives, all that gets lost.
So where does that leave Corey? How does a mother even begin to move on after something like this?
That's a good question.
It's a story of incredible strength and resilience. She's chosen to rebuild her life, to honor her husband's memory, and to find a way to heal from all this trauma and loss.
It's inspiring to see her strength, choosing hope over despair.
What about Nick? He's in prison, serving his 35-year sentence, but he says he was manipulated by Jackie, that he wasn't the one really driving this plan.
Oh, really? Trying to shift the blame, huh?
It's natural, right? When you're facing the consequences, you want to minimize your role. But even if we say, okay, maybe Jackie did have a strong influence on him, it doesn't let Nick off the hook for what he did.
No, not at all.
He made the choice to participate, and that choice cost his father his life and destroyed his family.
Accountability isn't about pointing fingers. It's about owning up to the impact of your actions.
So how does someone like Nick actually achieve that accountability? Is it just serving his time, or is there something more to it?
True accountability means really looking at the harm you caused and feeling true remorse, making amends, and changing yourself, even if you're in prison.
A long and tough road, right?
Yeah.
It takes a lot of soul-searching and facing some hard truths about yourself.
It definitely does. And whether Nick actually does that, well, that remains to be seen.
And then there's forgiveness. Can Corey ever truly forgive her son for what he did? Is forgiveness even possible after something like this?
Forgiveness is such a personal and complicated thing.
Right.
It's not about saying what happened was okay, but about finding a way to let go of the anger and resentment, to move on without being stuck in the pain.
It's a journey that takes time, sometimes professional help. And in this case, it's even more complicated because Nick is still alive, still out there. Corey has to live with the knowledge that the person who shattered her world is still existing.
That adds another layer of complexity to her healing process, for sure. It makes it harder to process everything and find any kind of closure.
So what's next for Corey? How does she even begin to rebuild her life after such a devastating loss?
Well, we know that she's moved, started a new life with a new name. It's a way to reclaim her identity, to distance herself from the pain and all the attention the case brought.
That's a brave step. It shows how determined she is to find peace and happiness.
It's amazing how resilient the human spirit can be. Even in the face of such darkness, there's always the potential for healing and growth.
And that brings us back to the heart of this story, right? The complexities of family, the darker sides of human nature, and the flaws in our justice system.
It's a case that makes us think about the people we love, the choices we make, and the power of both love and betrayal.
It's a story that leaves us with more questions than answers, and makes us think about the impact of our actions and how they affect others. This case really stays with you, doesn't it? It's like all the twists and turns, it makes you think about human nature, and trust and how powerful greed can be.
Yeah, it's definitely one that sticks with you. And for me, one of the biggest things is that question of justice. Was justice really served here?
That's been hanging over us this whole time, hasn't it? The difference in Nick and Jackie's sentences, it feels like Jackie got away with it, and that's hard to swallow.
It shows how complicated the legal system can be. I mean, it's supposed to be fair, but it's run by people, and people have their own views and biases.
And here it seems like getting a conviction, getting Nick to plead guilty, was more important than making sure Jackie was punished for what she did.
That's a good point. Plea bargains are so common, but they can leave victims and their families feeling like they didn't get justice.
Especially in a case like this, where the emotional impact is so huge. Corey lost her husband, her sense of security, and then had to face the fact that her own son was behind it all. Seeing Jackie walk away with a slap on the wrist, it's gotta be infuriating.
It makes sense that she'd be outraged. It goes against that basic human need for fairness, that feeling that things have been set right.
It makes you think about what punishment is even for. Is it about revenge, about rehabilitation, or something else entirely?
That's a question that's been debated forever. In this case, you see a bit of both, right?
Well,
Nick, Leon, and Smith got long sentences, so there's the punishment aspect. But Jackie's lighter sentence, maybe that's the rehabilitation side, because she cooperated.
but even if those plea deals made legal sense, it doesn't take away the emotional damage. Corey has to pick up the pieces, try to heal, and she's still dealing with those unanswered questions about justice and forgiveness.
And that's where her story goes beyond just this case. It's about that human ability to be resilient, even when facing unbelievable trauma.
It's incredible how strong she is. She could have easily given in to anger and bitterness, but she chose to focus on rebuilding her life, honoring her husband, and finding a way to heal.
It reminds us that even in the darkest times, there's always a chance for growth, for finding meaning and purpose.
And this deep dive, it's taken us to some pretty dark places, hasn't it? But it's also shown us the strength of the human spirit, the power of love and compassion, and how complex the justice system really is.
It's definitely been a journey, and it challenges us to look at our own ideas about family and trust and what justice really means. It makes us think about how we'd handle that kind of betrayal and what it takes to find healing and forgiveness.
And in the end, it leaves us with this question. How do we balance the need for accountability with the possibility of redemption? Both for those who've done terrible things and for those who've been hurt by them.
That's a question we all have to wrestle with. There are no easy answers. But by facing these tough questions, by understanding how complicated people are and how powerful both darkness and light can be, maybe we can find a way to be more understanding, more empathetic, and create a world that's more just.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Shaughnessy case. It's been a challenging journey, but I hope it's given us all something to think about.
It's been my pleasure, and I hope it's made you think more about the world around us and the choices we all make, big and small, because they shape our lives and the lives of everyone around us.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep searching for those bits of truth that help us understand this crazy thing we call life.